Right now, your brain is making thousands of tiny decisions without you even noticing. But what happens when you face a life-changing choice? Should you take that job offer? End that relationship? Move to a new city? In those moments, your brain transforms into a battlefield where millions of neurons fire in patterns that can literally change the architecture of your mind. And what's happening inside your skull during these moments is far stranger and more fascinating than you ever imagined. Every single day, you make about 35,000 decisions. Most of them are automatic, like what to eat for breakfast or which route to take to work. But then there are the big ones, the decisions that keep you up at night, that make your palms sweat, that feel like they could alter the entire trajectory of your life. And when you're facing one of these monumental choices, something extraordinary happens inside your brain. Today, we're going deep inside your neural circuits to understand exactly what's happening when you make the decisions that matter most. Let's start with the basics. When you're confronted with a major decision, multiple regions of your brain light up simultaneously, creating what neuroscientists call a decision-making network. But this isn't just one area doing all the work. It's more like an orchestra with different sections playing different parts. First, there's your prefrontal cortex, located right behind your forehead. This is your brain CEO, the rational executive who tries to weigh pros and cons logically. It's the voice in your head saying, "Let's think about this carefully." But the prefrontal cortex doesn't work alone. Deep inside your brain, buried beneath the cortex, sits a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. This is your emotional alarm system, the part of your brain that's been keeping humans alive for hundreds of thousands of years. When you're making a big decision, your amygdala is scanning for threats, pumping out emotions, and basically screaming. But what if everything goes wrong? Then there's the anterior cingulate cortex, which acts like a conflict detector. It lights up when you're torn between two options, when the decision feels impossibly difficult. This region is essentially your brain's way of saying, "Houston, we have a problem." And we can't forget the striatum, part of your brain's reward system. This area is constantly calculating potential rewards, trying to predict which choice will bring you the most satisfaction, pleasure, or success. When you're facing a major decision, all these regions are communicating with each other through billions of neural connections, creating electrical storms of activity that are unique to that specific moment in your life. But your brain isn't just electrical, it's chemical too. And when you're making a big decision, your brain becomes a cocktail mixer, blending powerful neurotransmitters that dramatically influence your choice. Dopamine is one of the major players. This is your brain's anticipation molecule, the chemical that makes you feel excited about potential rewards. When you're considering a decision that could lead to something great, like accepting a dream job or starting a new relationship, dopamine floods your striatum. It's the feeling of butterflies in your stomach, that sense of thrilling possibility. But here's the catch. Dopamine doesn't just respond to actual rewards. It responds to the anticipation of rewards, which means your brain might be getting you excited about something that may never materialize. Then there's serotonin, which helps regulate your mood and confidence. Studies have shown that people with higher serotonin levels tend to make more patient, long-term oriented decisions, while those with lower levels might opt for immediate gratification. This is why you might make different decisions when you're feeling depressed versus when you're feeling on top of the world. Cortisol, the stress hormone, also plays a crucial role. When you're stressed about a major decision, your adrenal glands pump cortisol into your bloodstream. A little bit of cortisol can sharpen your focus and help you evaluate risks more carefully. But too much, and it can actually impair your decision-making abilities, pushing you toward more impulsive or fear-based choices. And let's not forget norepinephrine, which increases arousal and alertness. This is the chemical that makes your heart race when you're on the verge of making a life-changing choice. It helps you focus intensely on the decision at hand, but it can also create that overwhelming feeling of anxiety that makes big decisions feel so uncomfortable. The balance of these chemicals in your brain at any given moment can literally change which option you choose. This means that the same decision made on a Monday morning after a good night's sleep might look completely different than the same decision made on Friday evening after a stressful week. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize for identifying two distinct systems in human decision-making. And understanding these systems can help explain why big decisions feel so different from everyday choices. System 1 is fast, automatic, and emotional. This is the system that helps you catch a ball, recognize a friend's face, or swerve to avoid an accident. It operates below conscious awareness and makes decisions in milliseconds. System 1 is governed largely by your amygdala and other emotional centers. It's intuitive, gut-based, and powered by patterns your brain has learned over a lifetime. System 2 is slow, deliberate, and logical. This is the system you use when you're calculating a math problem, planning a complex project, or trying to rationally weigh the pros and cons of a major life decision. System 2 is primarily run by your prefrontal cortex, and it requires effort and concentration to use. Here's what's fascinating. When you're making a big decision, both systems are active, and they're often in conflict with each other. Your System 1 might be screaming, "Take the risk. This feels right," while your System 2 is methodically listing all the reasons why it's a terrible idea. Or vice versa. Research shows that the best decisions often come from a collaboration between these two systems. Pure logic without emotion can lead to cold, unsatisfying choices that ignore your values and desires. Pure emotion without logic can lead to impulsive decisions you'll later regret. The magic happens when you can access both your gut feeling and your rational analysis. But here's the problem. Under stress, your brain tends to default to System 1. When you're anxious, overwhelmed, or time-pressured, your prefrontal cortex essentially goes offline, and your emotional brain takes over. This is why you might make very different decisions when you're calm versus when you're panicking. Now here's where things get really interesting. You might think that having more options would make decision-making easier, but research shows the exact opposite is true. Psychologist Barry Schwartz calls this the paradox of choice. When you're facing a big decision with multiple options, something strange happens in your brain. Your prefrontal cortex, which has to evaluate each option, becomes overloaded. Neuroimaging studies show that as the number of choices increases, activity in your prefrontal cortex initially increases, but then starts to decrease dramatically. Your brain essentially starts shutting down because it's overwhelmed. This is called decision fatigue, and it's a real neurological phenomenon. Your brain uses glucose as fuel for decision-making, and making multiple decisions depletes this fuel. As you make more and more choices throughout the day, your brain literally runs out of energy, which is why you might order takeout for dinner after a long day of making important decisions at work. Your brain is simply too tired to make one more choice. When you're facing a major decision, your brain is trying to simulate different futures. It's creating mental models of what might happen if you choose option A versus option B. This requires enormous computational power, engaging your hippocampus to recall relevant memories, your prefrontal cortex to project into the future, and your emotional centers to evaluate how you might feel in each scenario. The more options you have, the more simulations your brain has to run, and the more exhausted it becomes. This is why sometimes, when facing a truly massive decision with countless variables, people freeze up entirely. Their brains essentially throw up their hands and say, "I can't compute this." For centuries, philosophers and scientists believed that emotions were the enemy of good decision-making. But modern neuroscience has revealed something surprising. People with damage to the emotional centers of their brains actually make terrible decisions. There's a famous case study of a man known as Elliot, who had a tumor removed from his frontal lobe that damaged connections to his amygdala. After the surgery, Elliot's logic and reasoning abilities remained intact, but he lost the ability to feel emotions. And without emotions, he couldn't make even simple decisions. He would spend hours debating where to eat lunch, unable to settle on a choice because without emotional input, every option seemed equally valid or equally meaningless. This teaches us something profound. Emotions aren't irrational noise interfering with logical decisions. They're essential data points that your brain uses to evaluate options. Your emotions are essentially compressed wisdom, quick summaries of complex situations based on your values, past experiences, and deep-seated preferences. When you get a gut feeling about a decision, that's your emotional brain rapidly processing millions of data points below conscious awareness and delivering a verdict. Sometimes that gut feeling is picking up on subtle patterns that your conscious mind hasn't noticed. The person offering you that job seems trustworthy, but something feels off. Your amygdala might be detecting micro-expressions or inconsistencies that your logical brain hasn't consciously registered. Of course, emotions can also lead you astray, especially when they're based on fear, trauma, or cognitive biases. The key is learning to listen to your emotions without being controlled by them, to use them as information rather than as commands. So what actually happens in the final moment when you make your decision? When you finally say yes or no, commit or walk away, leap or stay put? Neuroscientists have identified something called the neural point of no return. This is the moment when your brain shifts from deliberation to commitment. Brain scans show that in the instant before you make your choice, there's a sudden spike of activity in your prefrontal cortex and striatum, almost like a neural crescendo. Then, something remarkable happens. Once you've made your decision, activity in many of these regions actually decreases. Your brain essentially relaxes. All that conflict, all that uncertainty, all those competing simulations of possible futures suddenly collapse into one chosen path. The quantum possibilities become a single reality. This is why many people report feeling a sense of relief once they've finally made a big decision, even if they're not entirely sure it's the right one. The act of choosing itself reduces the cognitive load on your brain. But here's something even more fascinating. After you make a decision, your brain immediately begins to rationalize it. This is called post-decision dissonance reduction or choice supportive bias. Your brain starts emphasizing all the positive aspects of your choice and downplaying the negatives. It also starts emphasizing the negatives of the options you didn't choose. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. This neural mechanism helps you commit fully to your decision and move forward with confidence rather than constantly second-guessing yourself. But it's important to be aware of it, because it means that your post-decision certainty doesn't necessarily mean you made the objectively best choice. It just means your brain is doing its job of helping you live with the choice you made. So how can you use this understanding of your brain to make better big decisions? First, recognize that timing matters. Your brain makes different decisions at different times of day. Research shows that people tend to make more optimal decisions in the morning when their prefrontal cortex is fresh and well-fueled. Avoid making major life decisions late at night or when you're stressed, hungry, or exhausted. Second, give your brain space to work. Some of the best decision-making happens below conscious awareness. After you've gathered information and analyzed your options, sometimes the best thing you can do is sleep on it. During sleep, your brain consolidates information and makes new connections. Many people report that decisions that seemed impossible suddenly become clear after a good night's rest. Third, try to activate both System 1 and System 2. Make a logical pros and cons list, but also pay attention to your emotional responses. How does each option feel in your body? What do your dreams tell you? What would you advise a friend in the same situation? Fourth, reduce the number of options when possible. If you're facing too many choices, try to narrow it down to 2 or 3 finalists. This prevents decision fatigue and allows your brain to do deeper analysis. And finally, remember that there's rarely one perfect choice. Your brain is trying to find certainty in an uncertain world. But the truth is that most big decisions have trade-offs. The goal isn't to make a perfect choice, it's to make a good enough choice and then commit to making it work. Every big decision you make literally changes your brain. The neural pathways you strengthen, the memories you create, the future you choose to step into, all of these reshape the physical structure of your mind. In a very real sense, you are the sum of all the decisions you've made, and your brain is the map of those choices. Understanding what happens in your brain during these pivotal moments doesn't make the decisions easier, but it can make you more compassionate with yourself. That churning anxiety, that sleepless deliberation, That sense of being torn in two, it's not weakness. It's your brain doing one of the most complex tasks it evolved to do, navigating uncertainty and choosing a path through an unknowable future. So the next time you're facing a big decision, remember that inside your skull, billions of neurons are working together in an intricate dance, balancing emotion and logic, past and future, fear and hope. Trust the process. Your brain has been making decisions for your entire life, and it's better at this than you think. The future is unwritten, and every choice is a chance to become the person you want to be. Your brain is ready. The only question is, what will you decide? If this video changed how you think about decision-making, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into how your brain works. Drop a comment and tell me about the biggest decision you're facing right now. And remember, your brain is an incredible tool. Learn to work with it, not against it, and you'll make choices you can be proud of. See you in the next video.